He was only 7 years old when he vanished from a crowded amusement park in California. One moment he was holding a balloon. The next, he was gone, without a trace. No witnesses, no footage, no leads. The world moved on, but his mother never did. Then, 11 years later, his name appeared, not in a police report, but in a forgotten corner of the internet, a single forum post, with a detail only she would recognize. What came next uncovered a truth more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? It was one of those warm, golden afternoons that seemed designed for happiness. The sky over Santa Cruz stretched cloudless and blue, the salty breeze from the Pacific drifting in with a lightness that made the bright flags above the amusement park flutter like they were part of some perfect postcard moment. Beneath them, the boardwalk was alive with laughter, music, and the familiar metallic clatter of roller coasters rising and falling in the distance. The scent of caramel corn, sunscreen, and sea air mingled with the roar of children and the jingle of games. It was July 22nd, 2012, a date that would be etched into Sarah Whitman's mind forever. Her son Mason was 7 years old, wide-eyed, curious. The kind of boy who asked too many questions and always wanted to win the biggest prize on the midway, even if it was just a plastic sword or a cheap stuffed bear. That day, he wore his favorite red Spider-Man shirt and a navy blue baseball cap that barely stayed on his head. Sarah could still see him, not just in memory. No, like still images burned into her mind. Him sitting on her shoulders to watch the street performers. Him pointing to the Ferris wheel, begging to ride it again. Him holding a cherry snow cone, the syrup staining his fingers pink, and then gone. It happened somewhere between the arcade and the cotton candy stand. One second he was there, bouncing in front of her with excitement, asking for just one more ride. The next, he'd vanished into the crowd like a drop of water, disappearing into the ocean. At first, she thought he'd wandered off. That was Mason, impulsive, fast, always chasing the next thing. She looked left, then right, calling his name over the noise. She jogged past the claw machines, past a teenage couple making out against a palm tree, past the man in the dolphin costume waving near the carousel. No Mason. Then came the panic, the kind that starts low in your stomach like a knot of fire and spreads through your chest until it claws at your throat. She screamed his name now, shouted it, screamed it again. People began to look. A security guard asked if she needed help. "He's 7, she sobbed. "He's wearing a red shirt. Spider-Man, he was right here, right here." The next hours were a blur, the next days even worse. Police, flyers, the scent of sunscreen on his backpack, the sound of roller coasters, suddenly sickening, the news crews, the hope that wilted into dread with every passing hour. They never found Mason. No witnesses, no cameras caught it, no ransom, no blood, no clues. Just silence, and a mother left to exist inside a silence too big to fill. 11 years later, Sarah Whitman sat alone at her small kitchen table in Sacramento, staring at the same photograph she stared at every July 22nd. It was the last picture she ever took of Mason. He was holding a balloon in the shape of a dinosaur, mid-laugh, his cheeks slightly flushed from the heat. Behind him, the colorful chaos of the amusement park stretched like a backdrop that now felt obscene. The photo was worn, creased at the corners, a thumb smudge on the edge. She'd held it through every police update, every therapy session, every candlelight vigil where people said they were so sorry and offered casseroles she never ate. Now she kept it in a frame beside a small brass urn. Mason had never been declared dead, but she kept the ashes of his childhood there, his artwork, his drawings, a piece of his first blanket, a funeral without a body. And then a sound, subtle, electronic, broke the silence. A ping from her laptop. Sarah glanced at it, annoyed at first. She didn't like distractions during that hour of the day, the sacred hour when she grieved in peace. But something about the subject line pulled her eyes back. Looking for info on Mason A. Whitman? Forum post by Blue Orchid 22. One new reply. Her heart stuttered. She clicked. It was a thread on a small, outdated forum called Echoes from Childhood, a space mostly used by young adults who had grown up in the foster. She'd never heard of it before. The post had gone up 2 days. Hi, I don't remember much before I was 7, but sometimes I have dreams about a red balloon and a beach. I think my name used to be Mace. Is that anyone? Sarah's breath stopped. She read the post again and again, every word pressing into her brain like a hand closing around her throat. She tried to reply, but the forum required an account. She fumbled with the sign-up form, fingers shaking, entering her email, creating a username, retyping the CAPTCHA 3 times because she couldn't see straight. She clicked Submit, waited, nothing. The original post had no replies. The user Blue Orchid 22 hadn't posted anything else. No profile picture, no bio, no location, just that one haunting message. She felt cold all over. Was it a prank? Some sick joke? Or was it something else? Something she hadn't let herself feel in. The next morning she drove back to Santa Cruz for the first time in nearly a decade. She hadn't planned to. She just ended up there. Like her hands drove without her permission. She walked the boardwalk like a ghost, passing the same cotton candy stand, the same arcade where Mason vanished. Everything looked smaller, duller, as if time had drained the color from the place. But one thing hadn't changed: the man in the dolphin costume. He was different now, younger, taller, thinner. But he stood in the same spot, waving at kids as if nothing had ever gone wrong on that pavement. She stopped and stared at him for a long time, and for the first time in years she whispered Mason's name aloud. Back in her apartment, Sarah dove deep into the internet. She searched public records, forums, Reddit threads. She posted on missing person Facebook groups. She even emailed the moderators of Echoes from Childhood, asking, begging, for any information about the user Blue Orchid 22. Days passed. Nothing. Then, another post. I keep seeing a woman's face in my dreams. She smells like jasmine. I think she used to sing me a song about stars. If you know what this means, please reply. That was it. That was her. The jasmine perfume she always wore. The lullaby. Starlight, star bright. Her body collapsed into sobs. It was him. It had to be him. But there was something else she hadn't told anyone, not even Ethan. The week before Mason disappeared, someone had slipped a folded note into her mailbox. No name, no return address, just a sentence scrawled in uneven handwriting. You don't watch him close enough. She'd shown it to the police, but they'd dismissed it as a prank. Now, sitting at her kitchen table, she opened her old keepsake box and found the note again. A single tear landed on the paper, and for the first time she noticed something she'd missed before: a faint watermark, a logo, and a number. 43. Every morning Sarah Whitman woke up before the sun, not out of discipline or choice, but because her body had forgotten how to rest. It was as if her soul had installed an alarm clock 11 years ago, one that ticked louder on certain days, one that refused to let her move on. She lived in a modest one-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood in Sacramento. The walls were thin. The heater clicked. Her neighbor upstairs, a retired Navy vet named Hank, dragged metal furniture around at odd hours, or maybe that's just what it sounded like when you couldn't sleep. Her mornings were slow. Coffee, 1 slice of toast. Buttered. No jam, no eggs. She'd once made big breakfasts for Mason, pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, bacon smiley faces, but now food was just fuel. She worked as a literature teacher at Sheldon High, a public school where half the staff changed every year, and the principal still called her Miss Whitman, even after a decade. She didn't correct him. She liked things to stay as they were. Her students respected her. Quietly. They didn't know about Mason. Only the office staff did. He wasn't a topic she brought up, not anymore. But there were reminders, always. A boy with messy brown hair in the third row. A question on a vocabulary quiz. Define, vanished. A library card someone left in her classroom issued to a child named Mason. Sarah's apartment was a museum of restraint. No clutter, no toys, no photos on the fridge. Only one frame, always in the same spot. The last photo of Mason. She dusted it weekly, sometimes daily. There was a small bookshelf where she kept certain things. Her diary, now on volume 17, a small wooden box containing the hospital bracelet from Mason's birth, and a faded flyer from 2012 that read, "Have you seen Mason Whitman? Age 7, last seen, Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, wearing a red Spider-Man shirt and navy cap. Contact SCPD if seen." She had memorized the phone number. Some days she visited support groups. She didn't talk. She just sat. Other parents would share stories about overdoses, runaways, custody battles, but none seemed to cut the same way. There was something about not knowing that hollowed a person differently, like you were grieving a ghost that might knock on your door tomorrow. One night, a woman named Carla approached her after a session. "You don't talk much," she said, smiling gently, "but you sit like you're holding something heavy." Sarah managed a tight nod. "I lost my son." Carla didn't ask when. She didn't need to. She just whispered, "Me too." Then they stood in silence for a long time. Sarah's ex-husband, Ethan, lived only 20 minutes away but felt continents apart. They had divorced 2 years after Mason vanished, not because of blame, not even because of grief, but because they became strangers, two people floating in separate orbits around the same black hole. Ethan worked night shifts as a hospital security guard, kept his hair shaved, lost weight, smoked now. They talked every few months, mostly in texts. He didn't believe in the forum post. "People make fake accounts all the time," he'd written. "Don't do this to yourself again, Sarah." She hadn't responded, but not everything in her life was broken. Her cat Juno, a quiet calico with a bad attitude, followed her from room to room. Sometimes Juno would meow softly, staring at the front door for long moments. And Sarah would wonder, does she expect him to walk through it too? There was also Detective Linda Reyes. Retired now, Reyes had been the original lead investigator on Mason's case. Back then she was sharp, no not, and deeply frustrated by the lack of leads. Sarah remembered her as one of the only officers who cried when she said they were calling off the search. They had reconnected recently, after the forum post. Reyes invited her to meet for coffee at a diner near the old precinct. She wore a beige windbreaker, gray in her hair now, and a small gold crucifix around her neck. "I've thought about him more times than I can count," she told. "There were things about that case that never sat right with me." "Like what?" Reyes lowered her voice. "The lack of witnesses, the missing camera footage, and something one of the janitors said about a blue costume." Sarah froze. "What costume?" "A mascot for the park, a blue bunny, but no employee ever admitted wearing it that day, and no name was ever assigned to it. The suit was unaccounted for, just gone." Later that week, Sarah opened one of her oldest journals. It was volume 2, the one from the month Mason disappeared. She flipped to July 21st. A passage read, "He begged to go to the park early. I told him we'd wait until after lunch. He made a deal. If he finished all his carrots, we'd leave early. I didn't think he'd actually do it." Her eyes burned. She flipped to July 22nd. Nothing written. Just a blank page. She stared at it for hours. She began rewatching old home videos on her laptop. Mason's 4th birthday. Mason trying to teach the cat to shake. Mason asking, "Do you think I'll remember this when I'm a grown-up?" She hadn't watched these in years. They hurt too much. But something inside her told her to look again, to look closer. In one video, Mason is holding a toy, a little plastic dinosaur. He's laughing, waving it in front of the camera, but something strange appears in the background, a man in a blue bunny costume, just out of focus. She hadn't noticed him before. Sarah took a screenshot and printed it out, circled the figure in red ink. Then she called Reyes. "You're not going to believe this," she said. Reyes arrived 40 minutes later, wearing the same windbreaker. They examined the image together. The bunny was standing near the carousel in the shadows. His head tilted. Reyes cursed under her breath. "That's him!" "What do you mean?" "I remember this photo." She reached into her worn purse and pulled out a file. Inside, a still frame from the amusement park's lost footage. Same bunny, same stance, same location. But the timestamp? 3 minutes before Mason vanished. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, gripping the frame of Mason's photo. Her mind raced with 100 theories, each worse than the last. But they all shared one thing. The man in the costume was real. He had been there. He had watched. And maybe, just maybe, he had taken Mason. On her nightstand, her phone buzzed. It was 2:17 a.m. A new email. Subject, "About your post?" From Blue Orchid 22-hour Proton Mail. Message, "Do you remember a song about stars? Because I can't stop hearing it in my head." Sarah's fingers went numb. It had to be. Sarah couldn't breathe. She read the email again, lips trembling. "Do you remember a song about stars? Because I can't stop hearing it in my head." It shouldn't have been possible. That lullaby, "Starlight, star bright, first star I see tonight," was something only she used to sing to Mason. It wasn't recorded anywhere. Not in the videos, not on social media, not even in her journals. It was theirs, just theirs. She wanted to scream, cry, throw the laptop, but instead she hit reply. "Who are you? Where are you, please? I think I'm your mother." She hit send and waited. The response never came that night. But something else did. A package. At 6:32 a.m., just as Sarah was reaching for her coat to leave for school, she opened the front door to find a small padded envelope on the doormat. No postage. No. Just her apartment number written in black marker. Crooked, rushed. She froze, picked it up. Inside there was only one item. A blue wristband with faded letters that once read Santa Cruz Boardwalk, VIP Day Pass. And below it, folded once, a Polaroid photo. It was blurry, low light. It showed a child, could have been Mason, sitting in what looked like a basement. The kid's face was half-turned, unrecognizable. But what made Sarah's heart crash was the object in the corner. A plastic dinosaur, the same one from the video. Her knees gave out. Detective Reyes was at her apartment within the hour. She examined the package with gloved hands, carefully slipping the items into separate bags. Sarah was pacing, biting her thumbnail raw. Could this be Mason? She asked. Reyes was quiet. Maybe. Could be someone playing a very cruel game, too. Sarah looked up, eyes blazing. "I need you to believe me." Reyes sighed. "I do. That's why I'm here." They sent the photo and the wristband to a private lab in Berkeley for prints and analysis. But Reyes warned her results could take days, maybe weeks. The lab wasn't official police protocol. She had retired. They didn't have authority. Sarah didn't care. She needed something to happen. That night, she stayed up until dawn, combing through the echoes from Childhood Forum. It was a rabbit hole, dozens of anonymous users sharing fragments of childhood trauma. Kids remembering burnt pancakes, dogs named Max, parents who vanished, strangers who smelled like bleach. Some were just venting, others were trying to find someone, anyone, who remembered them. Sarah made a list of every post made by Blue Orchid 22. There were only 3, but in another thread, one about recurring dreams from foster homes. Someone had replied to Blue Orchid, a user named Tangerine Teeth. "Hey, I know that basement. Had one just like it, in Chico. Think the walls were red. You ever sleep under a skylight with bars on it? There was a lady named Mommy J. She made us call her that." Sarah's pulse spiked. She opened a new tab, searched Mommy J. Chico, California foster home. And there it was. Unlicensed caregiver accused of neglect and endangerment. Real name, Janice K. Loman known, alias Mommy J. Operated informal group foster home for over 10 years. Shut down by Child Services in 2016. Location, 412 Pine Needle Road, outskirts of Chico, CA. The photo in the article showed a woman in her 50s with stringy blonde hair and dark bags under her. But Sarah didn't care about her face. She cared about the background, a basement window with bars. She printed the article. 2 days later, another envelope arrived. Same handwriting. Inside, a child's drawing. Crayon on lined paper. A picture of a small boy standing next to a tall blue figure. A rabbit costume. Big eyes. Smiling. The boy had a red shirt and a sad face. Underneath, in shaky letters, "He said I was lucky. I got to leave the others behind." Sarah's hands were shaking. Others? What others? Reyes called her that night. "Got a partial fingerprint from the wristband," she said. "Too smudged to identify, but the ink used on the envelope, same type used by the park's ticket office in 2012. They had custom ink pads for VIP guests. Super specific." Sarah clutched the phone. "So, it's real." Reyes hesitated. "It's something." Then, softer, "I want you to prepare yourself. If this is Mason, he's not the same boy. And if it's not, but I have to try." She took a leave of absence from school. Didn't explain much. Just family emergency. The principal nodded, sympathetic, but She drove to Chico the next morning. The house at 412 Pine Needle Road was boarded up. The lawn was dead. Graffiti stained the side paneling. "Monster," it said in red spray paint. Through a broken side window, she saw a staircase leading down, a basement door with peeling paint. She stood outside for nearly an hour. Then someone appeared. A neighbor, old, gray-bearded, holding a rake. "Looking for Janice?" he asked. Sarah hesitated. "No, just curious. Did kids live here?" "If you call it that." "She always had a dozen of them. Skinny little things. Never saw 'em smile. Heard screams some nights. Shoulda called someone sooner." "Did you ever see a boy about 7, red shirt, name Mason?" He squinted. "I remember one who always tried to run, had a dinosaur toy, real quiet kid, didn't speak much. Then one day he was gone." Poof. Sarah sat in her car and cried until her throat hurt. Back in Sacramento, she received another email from Blue Orchid 22. "Sometimes I dream about someone calling my name. It feels real. Is that you?" She replied immediately. "Yes, it's me. I never stopped calling." Minutes later, "Then why did you stop looking?" Sarah's world shattered. "I never stopped," she wrote back. "Prove it," came the then silence. The next morning, another package. This time, inside, a spiral-bound notebook. The cover read, "My name is not Mason." Page after page of drawings, scribbles, memories, some pages torn. Others wet, as if with tears. On one page, scrawled in all caps, "The bunny said if I talk, I go back in the dark." Sarah nearly vomited. It wasn't just Mason who had suffered. He'd been conditioned, controlled, manipulated, but he was alive. In the middle of the notebook, tucked into the binding, was something else. A bracelet, tiny, blue plastic beads, a single silver charm in the center, a star. Sarah gasped. She had made that for Mason when he was 5. It had been on his wrist the day he disappeared. "This is his," she whispered. Reyes examined it, eyes misty. "I believe you now." "You didn't before?" "I wanted to, but you sounded like someone desperate to make sense of silence. Now I think someone's trying to help you break it." That evening, Sarah returned to the forum. There was a new post. I think my name used to be Mason A. Whitman, but the man in the rabbit suit said it wasn't. He told me they stopped looking. He said nobody loved me anymore. But now I think he lied. If you're reading this and you remember the song, write the next line. Sarah typed slowly. Starlight, star bright, first star I see tonight. I wish I may, I wish I might. Have this wish I wish tonight. She hit post and waited. The message Sarah posted sat online for 3 days. No reply. She refreshed the page at every hour, each time hoping for a new comment, a word, a sign, anything. But the thread went cold. Blue Orchid 22 vanished from the forum. Reyes suggested they step back and reevaluate. We've got a forum post, a couple of artifacts, a lot of emotion, but we need something physical, tangible, a real location. That's when Sarah remembered something, the number on the note from 2012. 43. She brought it back into the light, the note she'd kept hidden for years, with the faint watermark she'd only recently noticed. She placed it under a lamp. It was a stamp, not ink, pressure-based, the kind used on internal documents, the number 43, and a symbol, a small tower. Reyes stared at it. I know that. Sarah blinked. What? That's a logo. It was used on maintenance documents, belonged to a defunct private security contractor. They had a satellite office that serviced the boardwalk in 2012. Sarah's breath caught. Where was it? Reyes hesitated. Fresno. They drove to Fresno the next morning. The office building was now a mattress showroom, but the city records still had blueprints from the old days. Reyes, using an old contact in the city planning department, pulled the archived floor plans. In the basement level, storage room 43. Sarah stared at the schematic like it was a map to buried treasure. But when they visited, the current owner, a balding man named Rick, shrugged. Basements sealed off. No access. Foundation got reinforced in 2018. Sealed how? Reyes asked. Concrete. Whole lower level. Old tenants left it trashed. Mold, asbestos, rodents. City ordered it closed. We poured 2 feet of cement. Sarah felt the air drain from her lungs. Do you have any photos? Reyes asked. Rick pulled out his phone. Got a few from demo day. He scrolled. Stopped. Sarah leaned in. In one photo, blurry, dust-filled, there was a wall in the back of the basement, and painted on it, barely visible behind pipes, a blue bunny. They returned to Sacramento empty-handed, but not defeated. Reyes filed a formal inquiry with the city health department, attempting to gain access to old inspection reports. Sarah contacted every journalist who'd ever written about the 2012 case. Most never replied. One did. Mara Choi, then a junior reporter at the Santa Cruz Register, now a true crime podcaster with a growing following. I remember your son, she said on a call. I remember the silence around the case more. What do you mean? There were restrictions. Police refused to speak. The park offered no statements. It was like someone told them to back off. Sarah felt a chill. You think it was covered up? I think, Mara said, someone wanted it buried. Meanwhile, Sarah received another email. From Blue Orchid 22airprotonmail.com. Subject, I think I remember a smell. Message, lemons and metal. There was a hallway, cold floors. Someone used to whistle. I think I had a friend. His name was Theo. He cried at night. Then one day he was gone. I asked about him. They locked me in the quiet room. Sarah stared at the screen, goosebumps rising. She replied, Do you remember the name of the hallway? Or the place where the quiet room was? Do you remember the blue bunny? No reply. But an hour later, her phone rang. No caller ID. She answered. There was silence at first, then a voice, soft, cautious. I think I know who I am. Sarah's knees buckly. Mason? A long pause. I don't know if that's really my name. I'm your mother, she whispered. Then why didn't you come get me? I didn't know where you were. No one would tell me. What do I have to do? The voice quivered. Find Theo. The call ended. Sarah told Reyes everything. Theo, quiet room, lemon and metal. Reyes looked grim. Do you know how many illegal homes there were? Places that didn't get registered? The system is broken. These kids fall through the cracks. Then let's find a crack, Sarah said. They started with foster care archives from 2012 to 2016. Reyes used an old badge number to get access through a friend. Most records were incomplete. Some were redacted. One name kept showing up, Dr. Glenn Braver, a child psychologist contracted by private institutions for evaluations. His address? San Jose. They drove there the next morning. Dr. Braver lived in a gated community, tall hedges, expensive, silent. When they knocked, a housekeeper answered. Dr. Braver is away, she said. When will he be back? He's been gone since March. Sarah stepped forward. Gone where? The woman hesitated. He died. Heart attack. In Peru, hiking. Do you have any of his files? Sarah asked. The woman shook her head. Everything was taken by the foundation. Emberlight. Emberlight Behavioral. Reyes's head snapped up. I know that name. Emberlight Behavioral Center closed. Once operated out of a facility in Redding, California, specializing in alternative child recovery programs. Sarah searched the name online. Just one result, a PDF scan of an old brochure archived on an abandoned blog. Inside, a list of names, therapists, staff, volunteers. One name caught her eye, Janice K. Lohman. Residential assistant, 2011-2013, Mommy J. They went to Redding. The building was still there, a concrete shell of its former self. EMB was all that remained of the sign. The front doors were chained, but the side entrance was loose. They stepped inside. Dust, mold, water damage. The walls whispered. They found the records room, collapsed shelves, rats, papers strewn everywhere. Sarah scanned each file like her life depended on it. Then she found one, a thin folder labeled Theo Tanner. She opened it. Inside, a short intake form. Age 6. Transferred from another facility. Nope. Date of discharge unknown. Attached, a drawing. A bunny. Blue. And a child with red X's over the eyes. Sarah broke down. Reyes hugged her tightly. We're getting closer, she said. But to what? Sarah whispered. Truth or heartbreak? Later that night, another email. From blueorchid22protonmail.com. You found Theo? Sarah replied. I found where he was. He drew the bunny, too. Then, I believe you. And then one final line. Can I tell you a secret? Sarah's fingers trembled as she typed, yes, anything. And the next message shattered her world. I think the man in the bunny costume was your ex-husband. Sarah stared at the email. The cursor blinked beneath the words like a ticking bomb. I think the man in the bunny costume was your ex-husband. She read it again, and again. Her heart didn't know whether to break or explode. Her fingers went cold, her mouth dry. No, it couldn't be. Ethan had been with her at the park. She remembered, didn't she? That night she didn't sleep. She didn't cry. She sat at her desk, surrounded by photos, files, forum posts, and memories, all spinning like storm debris in her mind. Could Ethan have taken Mason? Impossible. They were together that day. They ate lunch, took turns taking Mason to the rides. They held hands, argued about sunscreen. She remembered all of it. But then, something floated up from deep inside. A moment she had never questioned. At one point, around 2 p.m., Ethan had gone to get water. Or had he? She couldn't remember seeing him again until almost an hour later. And when she asked him where he'd been, he'd said the line she'd heard 1,000 times. I got stuck in line. The vendor was slow. The next morning she called him. His voice was groggy. "Sarah? Everything okay?" She didn't answer immediately. "I need to see you." He met her at a diner off Stockton Boulevard, a place they used to go when Mason was a baby. Sarah came prepared. She brought the photo of the blue bunny and the drawing from the notebook. She slid them across the table. Ethan looked down, blinked slowly. "What is this?" "You tell me." "Sarah, I don't—" "Tell me you weren't wearing that suit." His face twisted, offended, then confused. "Are you serious?" "Just say no." "I wasn't." She stared at him. "I need to know for sure." He leaned back, shaking his head. "This is insane. That kid, whoever's emailing you, he's not Mason. You're just seeing what you want to see." Then she pulled out a memory card, slid it to him. "What's this?" "Security footage from the Santa Cruz Maintenance Archives. Reyes got it last week. You're in it." Ethan stared. "You're in the employee locker room at 2:09 p.m. on July 22nd, 2012, holding a large duffel bag, entering the costume corridor." Silence. Then Ethan exhaled, not like someone caught, like someone relieved. "I didn't take him," he said. Sarah's hand shook. "But you wore the suit." He nodded. "I didn't want to tell you, because it didn't mean anything." "You wore the Blue Bunny costume on the day our son disappeared, and it didn't mean anything?" "I was helping a friend. He owed me money. He worked night shifts cleaning the park, and that day he got sick. He begged me to cover the afternoon mascot shift, just a couple hours. I wore the suit, waved at kids, took pictures. That's it." Sarah was frozen. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I knew how it would sound. And I knew what you were going through. I didn't want to make it worse." She stared at him for a long time. Then she whispered, "Did you see Mason that day while wearing it?" Ethan looked away. "I saw a lot of kids." She left without saying goodbye. Reyes didn't react the way Sarah expected. "I believe him." "You do?" "He's a coward, not a predator, but someone else might have known he wore the suit and used it. There was someone else that day. A third person we haven't identified, the one who slipped the note in your mailbox, the one who sent the wristband." Reyes pulled out a map. "Let's retrace the timeline, not from your memory, from the evidence." They created a sequence of events. 1:45 p.m. Sarah and Mason buy cotton candy near the carousel. 2:00 p.m. Ethan leaves to get water. 2:09 p.m. Security footage captures Ethan entering the locker room. 2:16 p.m. Blue Bunny mascot spotted by two witnesses near the arcade. 2:19 p.m. Mason disappears. 2:22 p.m. Ethan returns to Sarah with 2 bottles of water. Reyes drew a red line under one section. According to records, the park had 2 mascot suits, one blue, one pink, one scheduled, one unused. Sarah leaned forward. "What if there were 2 bunnies?" Reyes called in a favor, an ex-forensics tech from SCPD named Jamie, who specialized in digital reconstruction. Jamie pulled hours of crowd footage, security feeds, cell phone videos. Using AI and motion tracking, they managed to isolate 2 separate appearances of the bunny mascot, in 2 locations simultaneously, 7 minutes apart, with no possible connection route between them. It was now undeniable. Someone else had worn the suit, and that person was never identified. Later that week, Sarah received a package with no return address. Inside, a USB drive. On it, a single video file. Footage of a basement hallway, dimly lit, camera shaky. A child's voice crying faintly in the distance, and then a door, marked with a blue star. The camera moves closer, knocking. Then a voice, deep, muffled. "We don't say names here, we don't ask questions, and we don't remember." Then static. Sarah collapsed into sobs. Reyes was speechless. They traced the metadata on the video. Location coordinates pointed to Humboldt County, Northern California. A compound registered to a religious charity, long since dissolved, called Children of the Pathway. They drove up 2 days later. The place was half buried in forest, overgrown, quiet. They entered through a side gate, flashlights cutting through the mist. The buildings were gutted, signs of fire, decay. But in the main structure's basement, they found a door with a faded blue star, and beneath it, scratches, dozens, as if someone had tried to claw their way out. Inside the room, darkness. But etched into the concrete wall, MW+, TT, Mason Whitman, and Theo Tanner. There was no doubt now. This was real. Everything he said, the emails, the posts, it was real. Back at home, Sarah received another email. No subject line, no sender, just one sentence. I remember your voice now. Attached, an audio file. She clicked play. A boy, softly. Starlight, star bright. Sarah pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. He was coming back to her. The audio file ended. Sarah sat frozen, the final note of that soft little voice echoing in her ears like a bell that refused to stop ringing. Starlight, star bright. It was him. It wasn't proof for a courtroom. It wouldn't make headlines. But in her bones, in the part of her that had never stopped whispering his name into the dark. She knew Mason was alive. Reyes made the next move. She submitted a formal request through her last active contact in Sacramento PD. With the digital forensics team's confirmation of the compound in Humboldt and the disturbing evidence, scratches, initials, and the Blue Star door, the case was reopened under the classification of long-term child abduction and unlawful imprisonment. A federal team was brought in. The compound was cordoned off, cadaver dogs, ground radar, interviews with former members of the dissolved religious charity. But they were met with silence, sealed records, and one repeated phrase from those who did talk. We were told the children were already forgotten. Sarah sat in the observation room while federal agents reviewed the footage. She wasn't invited into most of the meetings. She didn't care. All she wanted now was contact. She wrote a new message. Mason, if you're still out there, I'm not asking for proof anymore. I just want to see you, even for a second. Just let me know where you are. She didn't expect a reply, but one came. There's a bus stop in Eureka, Friday, 4:15 p.m. I'll sit under the billboard with the red flower. No name, no confirmation. But it was enough. Friday came. Sarah sat on a metal bench outside the Eureka Greyhound station. The billboard above her head showed a perfume ad. A red flower. It was raining. Softly. The kind of mist that seemed to hover rather than fall. She checked her phone every 3 seconds. Looked at every person who walked past. Then, at 4:17, she saw him, or someone who could be him. A young man, maybe 18 or 19, wearing a black hoodie and jeans too short at the ankles. He had a canvas backpack. He kept his head down. He walked toward the bench, sat, didn't look at her. Sarah's heart pounded. She didn't know what to say. Then he spoke. I used to dream you had wings. Her breath caught. He turned, and she knew. It was Mason, older, paler, eyes sunken, cheekbones sharper. But it was him. She reached out slowly. He flinched. She stopped. It's okay, she whispered. I won't touch you unless you say it's okay. He stared at her, eyes glassy. Then nodded, and she hugged him. Tightly, gently, like wrapping her arms around a ghost she thought would never solidify. He didn't cry. She did. They sat for hours. He didn't tell her everything. Not yet. He couldn't. But pieces came out like broken puzzle parts. He'd been taken by someone in a bunny suit. He remembered the basement, the quiet room. He remembered Theo. He remembered being told that the world had moved on, that his mother had signed papers to forget him. Sarah wept when he said, I never gave up. I looked every day. I prayed. I screamed at God. I fought the silence. He didn't reply, just looked at her hand. You have my fingers, he said. She brought him home that night. Her apartment had never. He wandered the space like it was a museum exhibit, looked at the bookshelf, the framed photo, the hospital bracelet, the star bracelet. This is mine, he said. Pick it up. You made it, she replied. He nodded, then placed it on his wrist. It was tight, but he didn't take it off. Ethan came 2 days later. Mason didn't say much. Couch. Said little. Just looked. After an hour, Mason said, You left me. Ethan's voice broke. I didn't know where you were. You were the bunny. No, I wasn't. I saw your shoes. Silence. Then Ethan nodded. I wore the suit. Once. But I didn't take you. I swear on my life. Mason looked at the floor, then walked out of the room. Healing wasn't linear. There were days Mason wouldn't leave his room. Nights he screamed in his sleep. Hours he sat staring at the television, but not watching. He didn't like hugs, didn't like phones, didn't like sirens. But he liked her. He liked her voice. When she sang the lullaby, he closed his eyes, let himself drift. She read to him at night, the same books from when he was little. Harold and the Purple Crayon, Where the Wild Things Are, and when she said the end, he always whispered, Read it again. One night, weeks after he'd returned, she asked if he wanted to go back to Santa Cruz, to the boardwalk, to the place where it all began. He said yes. They drove in silence, parked by the sand, walked toward the rides, the lights, the music. Mason didn't speak. Then he stopped, pointed. That's where he took me. Sarah followed his gaze. The arcade. He walked to a wooden pillar near the side, carved into it. Faint, almost invisible. MW plus TT. They had etched their names together, proof that Theo had been real, that it had all happened. Mason traced the letters with his fingers, then turned to her. Can we go home? She nodded. They walked back to the car. He reached for her hand and held it. It had been exactly 1 year since Mason came home. July 22nd. Sarah sat on the back porch of the small house they now shared in a quiet neighborhood just outside of Davis, California. It was nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, old paint, creaky steps. But it was theirs. Mason was inside, asleep. It had taken time, therapy, and unbearable patience. But he was healing. They both were. He had good days now, laughed sometimes, helped with groceries, took walks with Juno, the cat, who'd decided Mason was her human now. He even started drawing again, sometimes just shapes, sometimes things with eyes, sometimes a boy holding a balloon. Sarah sipped her tea and looked up at the sky. The stars were out. She found the first one, just above the tree. Starlight, star bright, first star I see tonight. She whispered the words like a prayer, not because she needed to wish for something more, but because they belonged to her, to him. To them. Behind her, the screen door creaked open. Mason stepped out barefoot, in a worn hoodie and pajama pants. He sat beside her. No words, just presence. He held out his hand. She took it, and together they looked at the sky. Weeks later, Reyes visited. She'd retired, again, but couldn't stay away. They had lunch, then sat on the porch. She handed Sarah a folder. What's this? Sarah asked. Final case summary. Do I want to read it? Probably not. But there's one name you should see. Inside the file on the last page was a photograph of a man, a former janitor, employed by the Santa Cruz Boardwalk maintenance team in 2012, fired 2 weeks after Mason vanished. His name, Keith Nellis. But what froze Sarah wasn't the name. It was the tattoo on his wrist, a blue star. He'd died in 2016, overdose, unclaimed body. He'd been a quiet employee, kept to himself, lived in a van behind the park, and in his belongings the police found drawings, hundreds, children, animals. A blue bunny. One drawing had two names in the corner, Mason, Theo. I thought I'd feel relief, Sarah whispered. Reyes nodded. But I just feel empty. You were right, Reyes said, about never giving up. Sarah looked out across the yard. No, I just refused to forget. Months passed. Then one morning, Mason brought her a box. Found this in the attic, he said. Didn't know we had an attic. Inside were some of Sarah's old belongings, yearbooks, photo albums, keepsakes from her 20s. He pulled out a Polaroid. "Who's this?" he asked. Sarah stared. It was a photo of her at 24, holding a baby Mason, standing in front of the Santa Cruz carousel. The date on the back, July 22nd, 2005. Exactly 7 years before the day he vanished. She smiled. "You?" He looked confused. "That's me?" "Yes." He held the photo gently, like it might break. "I don't remember this." She placed her hand on his shoulder. "You weren't supposed to remember everything. That's my job." Later that night, she framed the photo and placed it on the mantel, right beside the photo from the two ends of a timeline, one full circle. She sat back on the couch. Mason curled beside her, asleep. And for the first time in over a decade, Sarah Whitman felt peace, not because the past had been rewritten, but because the silence had finally ended. We like to think that time heals all things, but time is just a hallway. What heals is what we choose to carry through it. He was 7 when the world forgot him, 18 when he came back, and now he's just my son again. And in the end, she never needed the world to believe. She just needed him to say, "I remember your voice now."